The sleepy town of Oak Haven always seemed to hold its breath after dusk, exhaling only the softest whispers of wind through its ancient oak trees. For Elara Vance, librarian and quiet guardian of stories, these twilight hours were a cherished ritual. Her small cottage, nestled at the edge of the town's central park, offered a perfect vantage point for her evening ritual. Elara was a creature of gentle habits, her days filled with the hushed rustle of turning pages and the soft creak of old floorboards in the Oak Haven Public Library. Her hair, the color of rich caramel, was usually pulled back in a practical braid, but in the solitude of her home, it often escaped in soft tendrils around her heart-shaped face. Her eyes, the warm brown of cocoa, held a quiet intelligence and a hint of a dreamer's longing, a longing often stirred by the vast glittering expanse above. Tonight, the sky was a velvet cloak, embroidered with countless stars. Elara, wrapped in a knitted shawl, sat by her window, the pages of her current novel forgotten. She knew the constellations by heart, recognized the familiar patterns of Ursa Major and Orion, and often imagined the stories whispered across the light years. Oak Haven, tucked away in a valley far from the city glow, boasted some of the clearest night skies in the region, a fact Elara cherished deeply. It was one of the many reasons she had never truly considered leaving. Her life here was peaceful, predictable, and punctuated by the comforting rhythm of the seasons. But even the most predictable rhythms could be gently swayed. Liam Thorne wasn't looking for a quiet life when his car first sputtered into Oak Haven a week ago. He was looking for darkness. Not the metaphorical kind, but the pure, unblemished black canvas of a sky untouched by city lights, a place where the Milky Way truly shimmered like spilled diamond dust. He had chosen Oak Haven after countless hours poring over light pollution maps and obscure astronomy forums, all pointing to this small, unassuming town as a hidden gem for astrophotography. He'd rented the old Miller place on Elm Street, a charming but slightly ramshackle Victorian that promised vast attic space and a clear view to the north. He spent his first few days unpacking his formidable array of telescopes, cameras, and computer equipment, his mind already calculating azimuths and celestial coordinates. But even the most dedicated scientist needed supplies, and occasionally, a human connection. He found himself drawn to the town's small, brick-faced library, its warm glow a beacon on a particularly cloudy afternoon. The Oak Haven Public Library was Elara's sanctuary, a cathedral of quiet knowledge. She was reshelving a collection of antique celestial atlases, their leather-bound covers smooth beneath her fingertips, when the bell above the door chimed, a rare sound at this late hour. She glanced at the clock. It was nearly closing time. A man stood framed in the doorway, silhouetted against the fading afternoon light. He was tall, with a lean build and hair the color of rich earth, slightly tousled as if he'd just run his fingers through it. His shoulders were broad beneath a worn denim jacket, and a subtle scent of pine and something distinctly masculine seemed to precede him. His eyes, she noticed as he stepped further in, were the deep, thoughtful blue of a summer twilight, and they held a focused intensity that made her pause. "Excuse me," he said, his voice a low rumble, surprisingly gentle. "I hope I'm not disturbing you. I saw the light on." Elara felt a faint blush creep up her neck. She wasn't used to strangers, especially not ones who looked like they'd stepped out of an old nature documentary. "Not at all," she replied, her voice a little softer than usual. "We're open until 6. She gestured vaguely at the clock on the wall, which showed 5:50. "Can I help you?" He offered a tentative, charming smile that softened the intensity in his eyes. "I hope so. I'm Liam Thorne. I've just moved into the old Miller place on Elm Street. I'm an astrophotographer, and Oak Haven was highly recommended for its clear skies." He paused, looking around the library with an appreciative gaze. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined." His eyes finally settled back on her, a spark of curiosity in their depths. "I'm looking for anything on local legends, old star charts, maybe even historical accounts of celestial events specific to this region. I'm hoping to capture some unique Oak Haven sky lore." Elara felt a flutter in her chest. An astrophotographer. In Oak Haven. Someone who shared her quiet passion for the stars, but with a vibrant, active pursuit. It was an unexpected, delightful surprise. "An astrophotographer," she repeated, a genuine smile gracing her lips. "How wonderful. You've certainly come to the right place for clear skies." She gestured towards the section she was working in. "And as for local lore, you're in luck. We have a rather extensive collection of regional history and folklore, much of which touches on the night sky. Oak Haven has a long tradition of stargazing. Liam's smile widened, radiating warmth. Fantastic. I was worried I'd have to comb through dusty archives myself. This is much better. He moved closer, his gaze falling on the antique atlases she had been handling. Are these part of the collection? Yes, Elara said, picking up a particularly ornate volume with a faded gold-embossed cover. This one is from the late 18th century. It belonged to the town's founder, Arthur Vance. No relation, unfortunately, though I like to imagine we share a love for celestial cartography. She opened it gently, revealing intricate hand-drawn maps of constellations, their Latin names curling elegantly across the aged parchment. Liam leaned over, his shoulder brushing hers lightly. A jolt, subtle but undeniable, shot through Elara. He smelled of fresh air, and a hint of something metallic, perhaps from his equipment. Incredible, he murmured, his voice close to her ear. Look at the detail. They had such a different perspective back then, didn't they? Less scientific, perhaps, but more poetic. Precisely, Elara agreed, captivated by his proximity and the shared wonder in his voice. They saw stories in the stars, not just scientific data. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the Oak Haven sky, passed down through generations. Legends of the wishing star that only appears over the highest peak, or the moon weaver who spun the clouds into nebulae. Liam straightened, his eyes sparkling. The wishing star? The moon weaver? These are exactly the kinds of stories I'm hoping to uncover. Do you know where I might find them written down? Elara considered. Some are in the local history section, in old almanacs and personal journals. Others are purely oral tradition. I could certainly point you in the right direction. She led him to a quiet corner, pulling out several dusty tomes. As she explained their contents, Liam listened intently, his gaze often drifting from the books to her face, making her feel both seen and a little shy. This is amazing, Elara, he said, reading the spine of a book titled Oak Haven Celestial Echoes. You really know your stuff. It's my passion, she confessed, feeling more at ease with him than she expected. There's something incredibly comforting about knowing that the stars have watched over this town for centuries, bearing witness to everything. I feel the same way, Liam said, his voice softening. For me, photography is a way to capture that eternal witness, to freeze a moment of cosmic time. He picked up an old leather-bound book, its pages brittle with age. What's this one? Ah, that's a very special one, Elara said, reaching for it. It's a collection of local legends compiled by the town's first schoolmistress, Miss Penelope Finch. It's where I first read about the Whispering Comet. Liam's brows furrowed in intrigued concentration. The Whispering Comet? I don't think I've heard of that one. It's quite obscure, Elara explained, carefully opening the book to a faded illustration. It depicted a streaking comet with a faint, almost ethereal tail, arcing over a silhouette of Oak Haven. Legend says it only appears once every 50 years, just faintly visible from the highest peak overlooking Oak Haven. It's supposed to bring true love to those who wish upon it together. She felt a blush rise again, acutely aware of the romantic nature of the legend and the handsome man standing beside her. Liam studied the illustration, a thoughtful expression on his face. 50 years, huh? That's quite a wait. Has anyone ever seen it? My grandmother claimed her grandparents saw it, Elara admitted. She said it was visible from the Sentinel's Perch, the old ruined tower up on Blackwood Hill. It's quite a hike, but the view from there is unparalleled. She paused, then added, There's a small, almost undetectable fragment of a diary entry in another book that suggests the last recorded sighting was, well, about 50 years ago. Liam's blue eyes lit up with a sudden, electrifying intensity. 50 years ago. Elara, do you realize what that means? It could be due any time now. What if it's the season for it? He pulled out his phone, already opening an astronomy app, his fingers flying across the screen. Comet Hale-Bopp, Halley's Comet. There are so many, but a 50-year cycle, visible from a specific peak. This could be something unique, something truly special. Elara's heart began to thrum with a quiet excitement. The idea of the Whispering Comet, a mere legend, suddenly felt tangible, just within reach. I hadn't even thought about the timing, she confessed. I always considered it just a lovely story. But what if it's more? Liam's gaze was earnest, compelling. What if it's real? And what if we could be the ones to photograph it, to prove the legend? He looked from his phone to her, a hopeful plea in his eyes. You know the local terrain, the stories. I have the equipment, the technical know-how. We could look for it, together. The invitation hung in the air, shimmering like starlight. Ilara's logical mind told her it was a wild goose chase, a romantic fantasy. But her heart, stirred by the shared passion in his voice and the warmth of his presence, urged her to say yes. It had been a long time since anything truly unexpected had entered her quiet life. The Sentinel's perch is a bit overgrown, she said, a small smile playing on her lips. And it's a good hour's walk even from the base of Blackwood Hill. But I suppose it would be an adventure. Liam grinned, a genuine boyish flash of white teeth that made him even more charming. An adventure it is then. How about tomorrow evening? If the skies are clear, we could meet at the park entrance around sunset. I can bring my portable telescope and some snacks. Think of it as a research expedition. A research expedition, Ilara echoed, the words feeling delightfully conspiratorial. I'd like that, Liam. Very much. As the clock finally chimed 6, signaling closing time, Liam gathered the books he wanted to borrow, his movements efficient but unhurried. Thank you, Ilara, he said as she stamped his chosen volumes. This town, and its library, are already proving to be more incredible than I'd hoped. His eyes held hers for a beat longer than necessary, and Ilara felt a blush deepen. After he left, the library felt strangely empty, yet simultaneously alive with a new energy. The scent of old paper mingled with the faint, lingering aroma of pine and Liam's subtle presence. Ilara finished her duties, her mind racing with thoughts of comets and legends and blue-eyed astrophotographers. The next evening, Ilara found herself unusually restless. She changed her clothes 3 times, finally settling on sturdy walking boots, comfortable jeans, and a soft forest green sweater. She packed a small thermos of tea and some homemade oat cookies. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, she walked to the park entrance, her heart thrumming with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. Liam was already there, leaning against a towering oak, his silhouette framed against the fading light. He wore similar practical attire, and a large backpack was slung over one shoulder. He looked up as she approached, his smile immediately easing her nerves. Ilara, he greeted, his voice warm. Perfect timing. The sky looks promising tonight. It does, she agreed, her gaze sweeping across the vast expanse. It's always breathtaking around here. They set off, following a winding, narrow path that led out of the park and towards the base of Blackwood Hill. The initial conversation was light, a comfortable exchange of observations about the natural beauty surrounding them. Liam spoke of the challenges of astrophotography, the patience required, the thrill of capturing a distant galaxy. Ilara in turn shared stories of Oakhaven's history, pointing out ancient trees and explaining the origins of various local landmarks. As they began the ascent up Blackwood Hill, the path grew steeper and more rugged. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the world transformed into shades of indigo and violet. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine needles. The moon, a mere sliver of silver, hung low in the sky, casting long, dancing shadows through the trees. So, Liam said, his breath even despite the climb, what made you decide to become a librarian, Ilara? She considered for a moment. I suppose it was inevitable. I grew up surrounded by books. My grandmother was a storyteller, and my parents always encouraged my love for reading. There's something magical about being surrounded by so many different worlds, so many voices, all waiting to be discovered. And I love connecting people with those stories. She glanced at him. What about you? What drew you to the stars? He paused, looking up at the sky, which was slowly beginning to pepper with the first faint stars. I think it was the sheer scale of it all, the immensity. It puts everything into perspective, doesn't it? Our worries, our daily lives, they seem so small, yet so precious, against that backdrop. I remember looking through my dad's old telescope for the first time when I was a kid. Seeing the rings of Saturn, the craters on the moon. It was like looking back in time and forward into infinity, all at once. I wanted to capture that feeling that... His earnestness, his quiet passion, resonated deeply with Ilara. She found herself leaning into his words, comfortable in the easy flow of their conversation. They talked about dreams, about the quiet joys of solitude, and the unexpected warmth of shared companionship. Finally, they reached the summit. The Sentinel's Perch was indeed a ruin, a crumbling stone tower that offered little shelter but an unobstructed, panoramic view of the Oakhaven Valley, stretching out beneath a sky that was now a breathtaking tapestry of glittering stars. Liam, with surprising agility, set up his portable telescope and tripod, his movements precise and practiced. "The view is even better than I remembered," Ilara breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. The town lights below were a gentle scattering of gold, but above, the stars blazed with an intensity she rarely saw, even from her cottage window. "It's magnificent," Liam agreed, his voice hushed. He adjusted the telescope, then motioned for her. "Come here, take a look." Ilara peered into the eyepiece. The moon, now a sharply defined crescent, filled the lens, its craters and shadows rendered in exquisite detail. "Oh, Liam," she whispered. "It's beautiful." He smiled, a quiet, contented sound. "It really is. Now let's see if we can find any sign of our whispering comet." He began to scan the sky, explaining the movements of various celestial bodies, pointing out constellations with a practiced ease. His voice was a low, soothing murmur that somehow felt perfectly attuned to the vast silence of the night. Ilara found herself leaning closer, not just to hear him better, but drawn by the warmth of his presence. They spent the next hour gazing at the stars, Liam guiding her through nebulae and distant galaxies, sharing his knowledge with an infectious enthusiasm. The comet remained elusive, but the search itself felt like a reward. The air grew colder, but Ilara felt a warmth spreading through her, a quiet joy that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Even if we don't find it tonight," Liam said, finally lowering his gaze from the sky to meet hers, "this has been incredible. Thank you for sharing your secret spot, Ilara." "Thank you for sharing your stars, Liam," she replied, her voice soft. "And your stories." A comfortable silence settled between them, filled only by the whisper of the wind through the tall grass around the tower. Ilara found herself wishing the moment could stretch on indefinitely, suspended beneath the infinite curtain of stars. As they began their descent, the moon now higher and brighter, casting their shadows long before them, a lightness settled in Ilara's heart. The path back felt less arduous, the darkness less intimidating. The stars above seemed to wink with a newfound mischief, and the sleepy town of Oakhaven felt less like a haven of quiet solitude, and more like a prelude to something wonderfully, beautifully new. Liam paused at her cottage gate, the scent of her honeysuckle heavy in the night air. "Thank you again, Ilara," he said, his voice soft, his blue eyes shimmering in the faint light. "For the adventure, and for reminding me that there's magic in legends, even in the most scientific pursuits." His gaze lingered, a silent question in its depth. "Perhaps," he added, "we could look for that comet again sometime? From the Sentinel's Perch, maybe a few nights from now, if the conditions are right." Ilara's heart fluttered, a sweet, hopeful rhythm. "I'd like that very much, Liam," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. The promise of another evening under the stars, another shared adventure, felt like a precious gift. As he turned to leave, she watched his silhouette merge with the shadows, the warmth of his smile still a vivid impression in her mind. She stepped inside, the quiet of her cottage suddenly filled with the echoes of his words, and the silent, shimmering whisper of the stars, now holding a promise of more. Ilara hugged herself, a soft smile playing on her lips. The air inside her cottage felt different now, imbued with a subtle hum of possibility. Liam's presence, though brief, had left an indelible mark, like a constellation newly discovered in a familiar sky. She moved through her evening routine, each action imbued with a new lightness. Washing the few dishes, tidying her small living space, tasks that usually felt simply functional, now seemed to be performed with a quiet, joyful anticipation. While she found herself replaying their conversation. The way his eyes had crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the sincerity in his voice when he spoke of the stars, the gentle warmth of his hand when had taken hers. Her gaze drifted to the window, where the night sky, now devoid of Liam's guiding presence, still shone with its myriad lights. She used to look at them with a sense of wonder and comfort, but tonight there was a new layer of meaning. They were no longer just distant luminaries, They were silent witnesses to a burgeoning connection, a shared secret between her and a man who saw magic in the same celestial tapestry. She wondered about his journey, what brought him to this quiet corner of the world, away from the bustling lights that often obscured such beauty. A gentle curiosity, free from intrusion, stirred within her. The next few days passed in a gentle rhythm. Elara tended her small garden, harvesting herbs for her tinctures and teas, her hands finding familiar comfort in the rich earth. She worked on a new batch of lavender-infused oil, its calming scent filling her cottage, but her mind often drifted. She'd catch herself humming a forgotten tune, or staring out at the horizon, a soft smile on her face. Her friend, Maeve, who ran the village bakery and was known for her perceptive eye, noticed the change. "You're positively glowing, Elara," Maeve remarked one afternoon, handing Elara a warm loaf of sourdough bread. "Like you've swallowed a little piece of the sun." Elara laughed, a genuine, unburdened sound. "It's just the spring air, Maeve." Maeve merely raised an eyebrow, a knowing glint in her eyes. Or perhaps a certain stargazing visitor. Elara felt a blush creep up her neck. Maeve was impossible to fool. He's very kind." "Kindness is a rare and precious thing," Maeve said softly, her gaze softening. "Hold on to it, dear heart. It's the brightest star in any sky." Elara nodded, a warmth spreading through her chest. Maeve's words resonated deeply. Kindness was indeed a star she hadn't realized she was missing, a guiding light in the quiet solitude she had grown accustomed to. The evening of their promised meeting arrived with a crisp, clear sky, as if the universe itself was conspiring to provide the perfect backdrop. Elara dressed with a little more care than usual, choosing a soft, flowing linen dress the color of moonlight, and letting her hair fall in loose waves around her shoulders. She lit a small lantern on her porch, its gentle glow a beacon in the twilight. Precisely when the first stars began to prickle the darkening sky, Liam appeared, walking up her winding path with a quiet confidence that was both reassuring and captivating. He carried a small, worn leather bag and a blanket tucked under his arm. His smile when he saw her was even warmer than she remembered, a light that seemed to reach her very soul. "Elara," he said, his voice a low, comforting hum. "You'll look beautiful." A flush warmed her cheeks. "Thank you, Liam. You too," she replied, noting his simple, dark shirt that made his eyes seem even more brilliant against the deepening twilight. "Ready for another adventure?" he asked, extending a hand to her. She placed her hand in his, feeling the familiar spark, a gentle current passing between them. More than ready. He led her not far from her cottage, to a gentle rise overlooking the valley, a spot she often visited for quiet contemplation. He spread the blanket carefully on the soft grass, then took out a thermos and 2 mugs from his bag. "I thought we might appreciate the view with some hot chocolate," he explained, pouring the steaming liquid. "My grandmother's recipe. She always said the stars tasted sweeter with a little cocoa." Elara took a mug, the warmth seeping into her hands. "Your grandmother sounds wonderful." "She was," Liam said, a fond smile touching his lips. "She taught me everything about looking up, not just at the stars, but at the potential in everything." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping their hot chocolate, watching the last vestiges of sunset bleed into the deep indigo of night. The air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. As the first prominent stars emerged, Liam began to point them out, his voice soft and resonant. "There's Cassiopeia," he said, tracing a W shape with his finger in the sky. "And over there, the faint glow of the Andromeda Galaxy, our nearest galactic neighbor, hurtling towards us at thousands of miles per hour, though we won't collide for another 4 billion years." He chuckled, a low, melodic sound. "No need to worry about that tonight." Elara listened, captivated not just by the celestial wonders, but by the quiet passion in his voice. He didn't just see dots of light, he saw stories, histories, and a profound interconnectedness. "It's incredible," she breathed, leaning back on her hands, her gaze fixed on the endless expanse. "To think of the scale of it all. It makes you feel small, doesn't it?" Liam mused. "But also part of something so much grander. That's what I love about it. It puts everything into perspective." He then pulled out a small, well-worn telescope from his bag, carefully setting it up. "Tonight," he announced, turning to her with an eager glint in his eyes, I thought we might visit some planetary neighbors." He adjusted the focus, his movements precise and practiced. First, Jupiter, the gas giant, with its magnificent stripes and its 4 largest moons discovered by Galileo. He stepped aside, gesturing for her to look. Elara leaned in, pressing her eye to the eyepiece. The world through the telescope was breathtaking. Jupiter, a swirling marble of ochre and cream, hung suspended in the blackness, so vivid it felt as though she could reach out and touch it. And around it, like tiny pearls, orbited its moons. "Oh, Liam," she whispered, a sense of profound wonder filling her. It's like magic." He smiled, a quiet joy in his expression. "It is, isn't it? The universe's own magic show." They spent hours that night, lost in the cosmic dance. He showed her Saturn, its rings a delicate, impossible halo, the faint, reddish glow of Mars, and countless distant star clusters, each a glittering jewel box. He told her stories of ancient navigators who used the stars to find their way, of astronomers who dared to challenge prevailing beliefs, of poets who found endless inspiration in the night sky. Elara, usually content in her own quiet world, found herself opening up to him, sharing her own simple wonders. The intricate patterns of moss on a stone, the way light filtered through the leaves of her favorite tree, the secret language of the herbs in her garden. She spoke of the peace she found in her solitude, but also of a quiet longing she hadn't fully acknowledged until now. "I've lived here for years," she confessed, her voice soft against the vastness of the night. "And I thought I knew all its secrets, all its beauty. But you've shown me a whole new sky right above my head." Liam turned his head, his gaze meeting hers in the dim light. "You already had the beauty in you, Elara. I just pointed out a few more lights." He reached out, his fingers gently brushing a stray wisp of hair from her cheek. The touch was feather-light, yet it sent a warmth through her that had nothing to do with the hot chocolate. As the night wore on, the air grew cooler, and a faint silver line appeared on the eastern horizon, hinting at the approaching dawn. They packed up the telescope and blanket, moving with a comfortable synchronicity that felt both new and familiar. Back at her cottage, Liam lingered on the porch. The first birds were beginning to chirp, their songs a gentle prelude to the day. "Thank you, Liam," Elara said, her voice imbued with a genuine gratitude that went beyond words. "This was extraordinary." "It was," he agreed, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Every moment." He paused, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I'm working on a project here, mapping some specific celestial events visible from this unique latitude. It requires a lot of night observations. Would you mind if I came by again? Perhaps we could share another night sky?" Elara's heart gave a little leap. "I wouldn't mind at all, Liam. I'd love that." He smiled, a deep, satisfied smile. "Good. Then I'll see you soon." With a final lingering look, he turned and disappeared into the soft, gray light of dawn. Elara went inside, but sleep felt impossible. Her mind was alight with new images, new feelings. The quiet longing she had mentioned to Liam now had a name, a direction. It wasn't just a longing for beauty, but for shared beauty, for the warmth of connection. She looked at her hands, still tingling from his touch, and then out at the sky, where the stars were fading, but their magic lingered. Over the next few weeks, Liam became a comforting, steady presence in Elara's life. He'd arrive a few evenings a week, sometimes with new stories of the constellations, sometimes with a rare meteorite fragment he'd acquired, or a book on ancient astronomy to share. He even showed her how to use a star chart, patiently guiding her fingers across the intricate patterns. Their conversations deepened. She learned about his nomadic childhood, moving with his scientist parents from one research station to another, fostering his fascination with the natural world and the cosmos. He spoke of the solitude that often accompanied such a life, and how he'd learned to find companionship in the vastness of the universe. He was a man of quiet intelligence and profound depth, yet possessed a playful humor that often caught her by surprise, making her laugh freely, a sound that felt new and liberating. In turn, Elara found herself sharing more of her own story. She spoke of her grandmother, a quiet healer who had taught her the wisdom of plants and the rhythm of the seasons, instilling in her a love for this quiet corner of the world. She spoke of the joy she found in crafting her tinctures, in nurturing her garden, in the simple, honest beauty of her daily life. She admitted to him her past hesitations about forming deep connections, a fear of disrupting the delicate balance of her peaceful existence. "It's a beautiful balance, Alara," he said one evening, as they sat by a small crackling fire had built outside her cottage, the air filled with the scent of burning wood and pine. "And I wouldn't want to disrupt it. Only, perhaps enrich it a little." His eyes, reflecting the firelight, held a gentle question. Alara looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw a man whose presence felt not like an intrusion, but like a natural extension of the peace she cherished. He didn't demand, he simply offered. "I think," she replied softly, "you already have." One cloudy evening, when the stars were hidden behind a veil of gray, Liam brought a different kind of magic. He arrived with a small, battered wooden box. "Since we can't visit the stars tonight," he said, setting the box between them on her small cottage table, "I thought we could bring them to us." He opened the box to reveal an intricate, hand-carved wooden astrolabe, its brass rings glinting in the lamplight. "This," he explained, carefully turning the delicate instrument, "is an astrolabe." He showed her how to use it, guiding her fingers across the engraved scales, explaining the complex movements of the celestial sphere it represented. Alara was fascinated, her mind delighting in the cleverness of its design, the way it mirrored the grand dance of the heavens in miniature. "It's a testament to human ingenuity," she marveled, tracing the delicate lines. "To try and understand something so vast, with such simple tools, and with such enduring wonder," Liam added, his gaze fixed on her, "not the astrolabe. It's that wonder, that curiosity, that truly connects us." Their hands brushed as he helped her adjust a dial, and this time the touch lingered, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken feelings growing between them. The air in the cozy cottage, usually so still, now hummed with a quiet electricity. They started spending time together during the day, too. Liam would sometimes join her in her garden, listening patiently as she explained the properties of different herbs. He even helped her repair a leaky section of her fence, his strong hands surprisingly gentle as he worked. Alara, in turn, began to share her meals with him, simple, wholesome dishes made from her garden's bounty, which he ate with genuine appreciation. One afternoon, as they walked through the sun-dappled woods near her cottage, a path she had always walked alone, Alara felt a profound sense of ease in his company. The silence between them was not empty, but full, rich with shared understanding. She pointed out a rare wildflower, its delicate petals a vibrant blue against the emerald moss. "My grandmother taught me how to find these," she said, kneeling to admire it. "She said they were like tiny pieces of the sky, fallen to earth." Liam knelt beside her, his presence warm and grounding. "She sounds like she had a beautiful way of seeing the world." "She did," Alara agreed, her voice soft with memory. "She taught me that there's magic in the everyday, if you only open your eyes to it." She looked up at him, her heart open. "You remind me of her, in a way. You see the magic everywhere." Liam's smile was tender. "And you, Alara, the magic." The compliments, spoken so simply and sincerely, took her breath away. She felt a warmth spread through her, a blush that wasn't just physical, but soul-deep. It was a recognition, a validation, that resonated with something she had always hoped to be, but rarely felt seen for. As spring deepened into early summer, their connection blossomed like the wild flowers in her meadow. They continued their stargazing sessions, each night revealing new celestial wonders and new facets of their growing affection. They would sometimes just lie on the blanket, side by side, not speaking, simply watching the constellations drift by, their hands occasionally brushing, a silent language passing between them. One evening, after a particularly brilliant meteor shower, as the last fiery streaks faded from the sky, Liam turned to her. His eyes, usually so bright with the reflected light of the stars, were now soft and full of a different kind of light. "Alara," he began, his voice a little lower than usual, "I feel like I've known you for a lifetime, and yet, every day I learn something new and wonderful about you." He reached for her hand, his thumb gently stroking her knuckles. "This quiet life you lead, it's so beautiful. And being here with you, sharing these moments, it feels like coming home." Alara's heart thrummed, a steady, joyful beat. His words were a balm to a part of her she hadn't realized was aching. She looked at his face, illuminated by the faint starlight, and saw honesty, tenderness, and a deep affection. "Liam," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I feel it too. With you, even the silence feels richer. My world feels brighter." He leaned closer, his gaze searching hers, asking a silent question she understood perfectly. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in too, her breath catching in her throat. The distance between them, which had always felt so natural and right, suddenly felt like a barrier. His lips met hers, softly at first, a gentle exploration, like the first tentative light of dawn. It was a kiss that tasted of starlight and warm cocoa, of pine forests and ancient wisdom, of quiet longing finally finding its voice. It was a kiss that promised connection, comfort, and a future woven with shared wonders. It was not a kiss of urgency, but of deep, unfolding tenderness, a gentle confirmation of everything that had been building between them. When they finally drew apart, a soft sigh escaped Alara's lips. Her eyes fluttered open, meeting his. There was a profound peace in his gaze, a quiet understanding that settled deep within her. The world around them seemed to shimmer, the stars above brighter, the air sweeter. "Alara," he murmured, his voice husky, his hand still holding hers, I think I'm falling in love with you." Her heart swelled, a joyful, expansive feeling she had never thought possible. The words, spoken so simply, were like a constellation forming in her own personal sky, illuminating every corner of her being. She tightened her grip on his hand, her gaze locked with his. "And I, Liam," she replied, her voice barely a whisper, yet resonating with all the truth in her heart, "I think I'm falling in love with you too." They sat there for a long time, under the vast, silent canvas of the night, their hands intertwined, their hearts beating in a shared rhythm. The world felt boundless, full of exquisite possibilities, yet also perfectly contained within the circle of their newfound love. The stars, those ancient distant witnesses, seemed to twinkle with a renewed brilliance, their silent whisper now a joyful song, promising not just more evenings, but a lifetime of shared adventures, both on Earth and among the celestial spheres. The journey had only just begun, a beautiful, unfolding story written in starlight and whispered hopes. The journey had only just begun, a beautiful, unfolding story written in starlight and whispered hopes. Alara stirred first, a soft sigh escaping her lips as the first blush of dawn painted the eastern sky in hues of rose and lavender. The air, crisp from the night, held the faint scent of pine and damp earth. She was still nestled against Liam, his arm a warm, solid anchor around her, his rhythmic breathing a lullaby against her ear. The magic of the previous night hadn't dissolved with the darkness. Instead, it had woven itself into the very fabric of the morning, settling around them like a comforting shawl. She turned her head slightly, her gaze tracing the gentle curve of his jaw, the dark fringe of his eyelashes. A smile, slow and tender, bloomed on her face. It felt as if 1,000 tiny stars had taken root in her chest, each one shimmering with a quiet joy. To wake beside him, to feel this profound sense of belonging, was a revelation. It wasn't just the thrill of new love, but the deep, resonant peace of finding a home she hadn't known she was searching for. Liam shifted then, a soft groan escaping him before his eyes fluttered open. For a moment, he looked disoriented, then his gaze met hers, and a slow, mirroring smile spread across his face, chasing away the last vestiges of sleep. His eyes, the color of warm honey, held a depth she was still learning to navigate, a kindness that reached into her very soul. "Morning, starlight," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep, yet impossibly gentle. He tightened his arm around her, pulling her a fraction closer. Alara laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes in the quiet morning. "Morning, Earth Dweller," she countered, the playful nickname already feeling familiar on her tongue. "Did you dream of galaxies?" He chuckled, a low rumble in his chest. "No, funnily enough, just this warmth, this quiet." He paused, his thumb tracing a path along her arm. "It feels right." "Why?" "It does," she agreed, her voice barely a whisper, her heart swelling with an emotion too vast for words. They lay there for a long moment, simply existing in the newfound comfort of each other's presence, letting the silence speak volumes. The world outside their small bubble of warmth was slowly awakening, birds beginning their morning chorus, the sun climbing higher. Eventually, the promise of coffee and the day ahead beckoned. They moved slowly, almost reverently, through the small rituals of morning. Leah made coffee, its rich aroma filling the air, while Alara found 2 mugs, her fingers brushing his as they reached for the sugar. There was an unspoken choreography to their movements, a natural ease that belied the newness of their connection. They sat at a small kitchen table, the sun now streaming through the window, bathing them in golden light. The simple act of sharing breakfast, warm toast and fruit, felt like a feast. Every glance, every shared smile, every brush of knees under the table was charged with the exquisite awareness of their new reality. "I still can't quite believe it," Alara confessed, stirring her coffee, her gaze fixed on the swirling cream. "It feels like something out of a dream." Liam reached across the table, taking her hand in his. His touch was firm, grounding. "It's real, Alara. More real than anything I felt in a long time." He squeezed her hand gently. "And it's just the beginning." As the morning unfolded, they decided to take a walk, letting the fresh air invigorate them. They ambled along a winding path through a small grove of ancient oak trees, their branches forming a dappled canopy overhead. The world, Alara mused, truly did seem brighter, sharper, infused with a new vibrancy. The emerald green of the moss on the tree trunks, the intricate patterns of sunlight filtering through the leaves, the cheerful chirping of unseen birds, everything felt like a gift, a testament to the beauty that had always been there, but which she now saw through the lens of shared joy. Liam walked beside her, his presence a comforting weight. He pointed out a particularly gnarled oak, its bark resembling an old man's weathered face, and spoke of how he used to climb it as a boy, imagining himself a king surveying his kingdom. Alara listened, captivated, picturing a younger Liam, full of boyish adventure and dreams. She found herself sharing anecdotes from her own childhood, stories of stargazing from her bedroom window, of drawing constellations in secret journals, of the quiet wonder she always felt observing the vastness above. They spoke of their passions too. Alara's eyes lit up as she described her work, her fascination with astrophysics, her desire to understand the universe's grand design. Liam, in turn, spoke of his love for the tangible, for working with his hands, for the satisfaction of creating something beautiful and functional. He mentioned a half-finished woodworking project, a complex, intricate design he'd been struggling with. And Alara found herself offering an idea, a different angle, based on the geometry of a nebula. His face brightened, a spark of inspiration in his eyes, and she felt a thrill, not just for the shared idea, but for the easy way their minds intertwined, finding common ground in unexpected places. By midday, they found themselves back at Liam's cozy cottage, its stone walls exuding a comforting warmth. The scent of pine from the nearby woods seemed to cling to the air, mingling with the subtle aroma of old books and something faintly spicy from a previous meal. Liam, ever the thoughtful host, suggested they make lunch together. Alara, who usually preferred the solitary pursuit of scientific papers to the communal joy of cooking, found herself eagerly agreeing. They moved with a gentle, unspoken rhythm in the small kitchen. Liam chopped vegetables with practiced ease, while Alara, initially a little clumsy, soon found her stride, measuring spices and stirring a simmering sauce. Their hands brushed often, reaching for the same ingredient, passing a bowl, and each touch sent a jolt of warmth through Alara, a silent reaffirmation of their connection. Liam would hum a soft tune under his breath, and Alara would find herself unconsciously swaying to the rhythm. There was a quiet domesticity to it all, a sense of building something together, not just a meal, but a shared experience, a foundation. Over a lunch of simple, delicious pasta, they delved deeper into their personal histories. Liam spoke of his family, of the quiet strength of his parents, of a beloved grandmother who taught him to appreciate the intricate beauty of the natural world. He spoke too of a past relationship that had ended gently, leaving him with a quiet understanding of what he truly sought, a partner who shared his sense of wonder, someone who saw the magic in the everyday. Alara, in turn, found herself opening up about her own journey. She spoke of her dedication to her studies, which often left little room for personal connections, and the occasional loneliness that accompanied a life spent largely in the pursuit of distant stars. Sometimes, she admitted, her voice softer than usual, I worried I was too abstract for most people, too focused on things that felt beyond reach. Liam reached across the table, his hand covering hers. Never, he said, his voice firm, his gaze unwavering. Your passion, Alara, it's one of the most beautiful things about you. It's what makes you shine. And those distant stars, they're not beyond reach, not when you're looking at them with someone who sees them too. He smiled, a comforting, reassuring smile. Besides, I think my feet are firmly enough on the ground for both of us. His words were a balm to a part of Alara's soul she hadn't realized was aching. He didn't just tolerate her passion, he celebrated it, saw it as an integral part of who she was. In that moment, she felt truly seen, truly understood in a way that resonated far beyond the surface. As the afternoon wore on, a gentle rain began to fall, pattering softly against the window panes. It lent an even cozier atmosphere to the cottage. They settled onto the comfortable sofa, a worn woolen blanket draped over their laps, sharing a book of poetry. Liam read aloud, his voice a soothing baritone, and Alara leaned her head against his shoulder, listening to the cadence of his words, feeling the warmth of his presence. They took turns, each reading a stanza, their voices weaving together like the threads of the blanket, creating a tapestry of shared intimacy. At one point, Liam paused, his finger tracing a line of poetry. And the world stood still, holding its breath, as two souls found their echo in the other. He looked at Alara, his eyes full of a quiet intensity. That's how it feels, doesn't it? Alara nodded, her throat a little tight with emotion. More than an echo, she whispered. Like two halves of a melody, finally finding harmony. The hours drifted by in a haze of comfortable conversation, shared silences, and the growing certainty that what they had found was something rare and precious. They talked about their dreams, big and small. Alara spoke of a desire to travel to remote observatories, to stand under skies untouched by light pollution. Liam, in turn, shared his ambition to renovate an old barn into a fully functional workshop, a place where he could craft beautiful things from wood and metal, a space filled with the scent of sawdust and creativity. Maybe, Liam mused, his gaze thoughtful, we could build a small observatory for you there, a little dome on the roof, just for your telescopes. Imagine, Alara, watching meteor showers from our own backyard. Alara's heart fluttered. The casual our own backyard had slipped out, a gentle hint of a shared future, and it filled her with a profound sense of hope. That sounds incredible, Liam, she said, her voice laced with wonder. A place where the earth meets the sky, all for us. Later, as dusk began to fall, painting the sky in soft mauves and grays, Liam suggested they prepare dinner together. This time, Alara took the lead, sharing a simple but flavorful recipe she'd learned from an old cookbook. Liam was her eager sous chef, chopping and stirring, his enthusiasm infectious. The kitchen was filled with laughter and the comforting aroma of garlic and herbs. As they worked, their hands brushed, their eyes met, and each time, a spark ignited, a silent acknowledgement of the growing flame between them. After dinner, they found themselves drawn back to the porch, where the stars, now visible through the clearing clouds, twinkled with a familiar brilliance. Liam had lit a small fire in a nearby fire pit, its flames dancing and casting warm shadows around them. They sat on a rustic wooden bench, wrapped in the same woolen blanket. Alara nestled close against Liam's side, his arm a secure embrace around her shoulders. The conversation flowed easily, moving from the profound to the playful. Liam told her a whimsical story he'd once imagined about a mischievous star who fell in love with a firefly, and Alara, in turn, explained the science behind a shooting star, but with such poetic language that it sounded like a fairy tale. You know, Liam said, his voice soft, gazing up at the vast expanse above them. I used to look at the stars and feel small, insignificant. But now, he paused, turning his head to look at her. Now with you I look up, and I feel part of something so much bigger, like we're part of that grand design you talk about. Alara reached up, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. We are, Liam. We always were. We just needed to find each other to truly see it. She felt a surge of overwhelming love, so potent and pure it made her eyes prickle. This man, with his grounded warmth and gentle soul, understood her in a way no one else ever had. He bridged the gap between her celestial dreams and her earthly longings. I can't imagine a world without you in it now, Liam confessed, his voice barely a whisper, his gaze locked with hers. It feels like my life only truly began when you walked into it. And mine, "When I found you under the stars," Alara replied, her heart overflowing. She leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to his lips, a kiss that tasted of starlight and wood smoke and the sweet promise of forever. It was a kiss that sealed not just a moment, but a future, a shared journey unfolding under the watchful, benevolent gaze of the universe. The fire crackled, sending sparks dancing towards the heavens, as if mirroring the sparks igniting within them. The night was vast, silent, and full of infinite possibilities. Their story, still in its tender beginnings, was a song waiting to be sung, a constellation waiting to be fully mapped. Each day a new star added to its beautiful, luminous form. And as they sat there, two souls intertwined, bathed in the gentle glow of the fire and the ancient light of the stars, they knew, with a certainty that settled deep in their bones, that their shared adventures had truly just begun. The universe, in all its boundless majesty, was now their playground, and their love, a guiding light, promised to illuminate every step of the way. The fire crackled, a rhythmic lullaby against the silence of the night. Alara leaned her head against Finn's shoulder, his warmth a comforting anchor in the cool air. He wrapped an arm around her, his fingers gently tracing patterns on her arm, sending shivers of pure contentment through her. The stars above seemed to wink in approval, each one a silent promise. She tilted her head up, her eyes meeting his, and in their depths, she saw not just love, but a shared wonder, an unspoken understanding that transcended words. He lowered his head, and their lips met. A soft, lingering kiss that tasted of starlight and campfire smoke. A sacred seal on their new beginning. It wasn't a kiss of desperate passion, but of deep, abiding tenderness, a quiet affirmation of a bond woven with threads of destiny and choice. As dawn painted the sky in hues of rose and gold, they packed up their camp, a familiar ease settling between them. Each movement was synchronized, a silent dance perfected over shared journeys. They spoke little, the lingering magic of the night still humming in the air, a melody only they could hear. The path back to civilization felt different now, not an end to an adventure, but merely a transition to the next. They drove in comfortable silence, hands occasionally finding each other across the console, a simple touch enough to convey a universe of feelings. The world outside the car window seemed brighter, sharper, as if their love had imbued it with a new vibrancy. The universe for them wasn't just the expanse of space above, but the boundless territory of their shared life. Their first adventure back in town was to find a place that could be their sanctuary, a home to fill with laughter and dreams. They found an old cottage on the edge of a whispering forest, a little worn but full of character, with a rambling garden that begged to be brought back to life. It had a wide porch perfect for morning coffee, and a window seat that overlooked the woods, a perfect spot for reading or simply watching the seasons change. It felt right, a place where their constellation could truly begin to form. They spent weeks transforming it, each hammer blow, each brushstroke, a shared act of creation. Finn, with his steady hands and practical mind, tackled the structural elements, while Alara, with her artistic eye and love for color, brought warmth and personality to every room. They argued playfully over paint swatches, laughed as they stumbled over furniture, and shared quiet, contented meals amidst the delightful chaos of renovation. Each decision, from the shade of blue for the kitchen walls to the antique lamp for the living room, was a star added to their emerging constellation, a testament to their growing ability to blend their individual tastes into a harmonious whole. They discovered each other's quirks. Finn's unexpected passion for baking sourdough, Alara's uncanny ability to identify bird calls, even the most obscure ones. These small revelations were like new constellations forming within their larger one, intricate and beautiful. Life settled into a rhythm, but it was a rhythm imbued with magic. Morning coffees on the porch became sacred rituals. Late-night talks by the fireplace stretched into the early hours, illuminated by the glow of embers and the deeper glow of understanding in their eyes. They hiked the nearby trails, mapping their own small corner of the world, discovering hidden waterfalls and ancient trees. They learned to communicate not just with words, but with glances, with the gentle squeeze of a hand, with the shared breath before a laugh. Alara found solace in Finn's quiet strength, his unwavering belief in her dreams. Finn discovered a playful, adventurous spirit in Alara that continually surprised and delighted him, pushing him gently beyond his comfort zones. Not every day was bathed in sunshine, of course. There were moments of doubt, small misunderstandings, the occasional frustration that comes with two distinct individuals sharing one life. One rainy afternoon, a minor disagreement about a leaky faucet escalated into a tense silence, each of them retreating into their own corner. Alara felt a pang of fear, a shadow of old anxieties, wondering if this beautiful thing they were building could truly withstand such everyday friction. But then Finn, with a sigh, put down his tools, walked over to her, and simply held out his hand. No words were needed. She took it, and in the warmth of his grasp, the tension melted away. They talked, not to assign blame, but to understand, to bridge the small gap that had formed. That moment, that shared vulnerability and reconciliation, became another luminous star in their constellation, proving their love wasn't fragile, but resilient. Their garden became a living metaphor for their love. They tilled the soil together, planted seeds, and watched with delight as sprouts emerged. Alara, with her intuitive touch, coaxed vibrant blooms from the earth, while Finn, with his methodical approach, built sturdy trellises and managed the practicalities. It was a place of quiet industry and shared joy, where they could lose themselves in the simple act of nurturing life. They dreamed aloud there, under the dappled sunlight, dreams of travel, of creative projects, of quiet evenings filled with music and good food. Each dream whispered into the fertile earth seemed to take root, a promise of future blossoms. Their adventurous spirits, sparked under starlit skies, didn't diminish. They planned trips, not grand, extravagant tours, but journeys of discovery. A road trip through coastal towns, where they collected seashells and watched dolphins play in the waves. A week spent in a remote mountain cabin, where the silence was so profound they could almost hear their own hearts beating in unison. In each new landscape, they found new facets of themselves and each other. Finn's unexpected delight in tasting exotic street food, Ilara's knack for striking up conversations with locals, uncovering hidden gems. These shared experiences were vibrant nebulae, swirls of color and light adding depth to their ever-growing constellation. One crisp autumn evening, as they sat on their porch swing, wrapped in a single blanket, watching the leaves fall like golden rain, Finn turned to Alara. "You know," he began, his voice soft, "I used to think my greatest adventures would be solitary ones, charting my own course. But with you, every day feels like a new expedition, and the best part is, I never have to navigate it alone." Alara leaned her head on his shoulder, her heart swelling with emotion. "And I," she whispered, "always felt like there was a song in my heart waiting for the right melody. You, Finn, are that melody. You make my song complete." It wasn't a formal proposal, no rings exchanged, but a quiet, profound vow exchanged under the watchful gaze of the first stars appearing in the twilight sky. It was a promise to keep exploring, to keep loving, to keep building their magnificent constellation, star by luminous star. Years unfolded, each one adding its own unique glow to their story. The cottage became a home overflowing with memories, the scent of Finn's baking, the sound of Ilara's laughter echoing through the garden, the quiet companionship of a rescue dog named Cosmos, who had a penchant for napping in sunbeams. They nurtured friendships, contributed to their community, and found joy in the simple rhythms of life. They learned that love wasn't a static destination, but a continuous journey, a gentle unfolding, a constant rediscovery. It was in the way Finn still brought Alara wildflowers from his hikes, just because. It was in the way Alara would leave him little notes, tucked into his lunch or slipped under his pillow, reminding him of her affection. One clear summer night, many years after their first starlit encounter, Alara and Finn sat once more by a fire, this time in their own garden, under a sky ablaze with stars. Cosmos, now silver around his muzzle, snored softly at their feet. They held hands, their fingers intertwined, the familiar warmth a testament to decades of shared life. Alara looked up at the vast cosmic tapestry. "Remember," she murmured, "how we said our love was a constellation waiting to be mapped?" Finn squeezed her hand. "It is, my love, and look how beautifully it shines." He pointed to the sky, but his gaze was inward, remembering. Each star they had added was a memory. The day they moved into the cottage, the first tomato ripened in their garden. The spontaneous road trip to see the aurora borealis. The quiet comfort of a shared grief. The triumph of a dream realized. The countless mornings and evenings spent simply being together. Their constellation wasn't just a collection of bright moments, but also the subtle, delicate threads of everyday kindness, shared silences, and unwavering support that wove them all together. It was a map of their souls, intertwined and illuminated, glowing with a soft, steady light that promised to burn eternally. They were older now, their faces etched with the gentle lines of a life well lived, but their eyes still held the same spark of wonder, the same deep affection. The universe, in all its boundless majesty, was still their playground, but now it was a playground they understood better, a playground they had filled with their own beautiful creations. Their love, a guiding light, promised to illuminate every step of the way, not just for them, but for anyone fortunate enough to witness its gentle glow. It was a love story whispered by the wind, sung by the crickets, and eternally written in the stars, a lullaby for the ages, forever unfolding, forever shining bright. As the fire dwindled to embers and the night deepened, Alara rested her head on Finn's shoulder, a sigh of profound contentment escaping her lips. He kissed the top of her head, a gesture as familiar and comforting as the rhythm of her own breath. The world outside their garden faded, leaving only the quiet magic of their love, a warmth that permeated everything. And as sleep began to softly claim them, they knew with a certainty that settled deep in their bones that this was their forever, a journey without end, a love as vast and brilliant as the cosmos itself. Sweet dreams, my love, sweet dreams.